All right, I'm making this video because to me, this testimony from Jeff Lacasse, I think, just really proves that Wendy Adelson was involved in the murder of Dan Markel. Some people may say, oh, Jeff Lacasse, he's just a jilted ex lover. He's trying to get back at her. I mean, Dan Rauschbaum basically tried to say that in his cross examination of Jeff, but I don't buy it. I think Jeff is an incredibly credible witness. I believe everything he says. He was caught under Wendy's spell and he didn't realize it. But then he looks back and he did. And if you see his police interview, 48 hours after the murder, he basically solved the case. I think Jeff is great. I think he's telling the truth. This testimony, where Jeff is talking about the 5 days before Dan Markel was murdered and a couple of conversations he had with Wendy, to me, just completely shows that she knew what was going on and was part of it. Also, I found a little part here in this testimony, which to me seems like Georgia has a little bit more to go in detail with Jeff about Wendy. Could be nothing, but I'll pause and I'll show you what I mean.
All right, Mr. Lacasse, I want to take you back to July 13th, 2014. This is going to be the Sunday before the homicide that we're here about. Did you see Wendy Adelson that evening at her residence here in Tallahassee?
Yes, after we returned from dinner and a movie, we went back to her residence. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and at some point that evening, did the issue of the relocation battle that was going on back in the summer of 2013 come up?
It did.
And is that the issue we've already touched on, which has to do with her wanting to move to South Florida with the children and filing a petition to do so in the courts?
That's right, and by extension, the issue of being stuck in Tallahassee.
Okay. And while discussing that issue, did Ms. Adelson make some statements to you about her brother Charlie?
She did.
And what were those statements?
She asked to speak to me confidentially in a very serious tone of voice, told me that Charlie had investigated all possible options to take care of the problem of Danny Markel, including hiring a hitman, which would cost about $15,000. And I later revised that and thought maybe it was $50,000, but the dollar amount was the only thing in question. She definitely said that Charles Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Danny Markel.
And when did she say Mr. Adelson had looked into hiring a hitman?
When the relocation was denied, the previous summer.
Okay. All right. And the dollar amount, so she either said 15 or 50, you're not sure which?
That's correct.
Okay. And when she said this, what was her demeanor like?
She's very serious.
All right, so definitely not the to be confused with the TV joke?
No, I'd heard that joke repeatedly. I knew that joke. This was something very different. This was chilling, a little scary, made my stomach flip. I found it disturbing. The joke was said in a lighthearted manner, and this was not said in that way. This was serious and said confidentially.
All right. So here's the part I talked about in the beginning about just a little. So check this out. There's like just a little pause. And then Georgia turns the page and then goes on to something else. Could this mean that there's something that she wanted to go into further detail about Wendy, but she's not using in this trial? Perhaps in Donna's? Perhaps in Wendy's? Maybe. Could mean nothing. I don't know. It's just a pause and a change of a piece of paper. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
All right. Thank you. And I want to, well, okay, I think we should go from there to the next day, which is going to be July 14th, 2014, the Monday before the murder.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see Wendy Adelson on that day?
Yeah, I can't remember if I contacted her, if she contacted me, but she was excited to see me. And I wasn't so sure about that because the night before we'd had an awkward conversation at the conclusion of that night, and I had told her that she didn't want to do this anymore, that she could just send me a text and I wouldn't, take any offense. We would just, break up. So I didn't get that text. Instead, I talked to Wendy Adelson, and she was excited to see me.
All right, so what did you do?
Well, then she needed to call me back, and it went from her enthusiasm about seeing me to let's just meet at yoga tonight, go in separate cars. So there was a real shift in about 30 minutes.
Did you go to yoga?
We did. We went to yoga.
All right. And after yoga, was there a discussion about your relationship and the status of your relationship?
Yeah, a very brief one. I mean, yoga's not a great place to talk, obviously. So while we were sitting there, she seemed very cold, and I kind of got the feeling that it was over, that this was it. So as we walked to the car, I tried to talk to her about the relationship, and that didn't go well. And so I just kind of put up my hands and walked away, feeling sad that this was it.
All right. And as you walked away, was that the end, or was there more conversation after you began to walk
No,
away?
she called out to me, and I walked back towards her. And she was deeply curious. Well, let me back up slightly. During that conversation, she didn't have any interest in spending any time with me for the rest of the week. So it kind of confirmed, like, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
But then when she called me back, she had a series of detailed questions about what I would be doing on Friday.
And Friday is going to be July 18th, right?
Yes,
And that's the date of the homicide?
that's exactly right.
What were her inquiries of you regarding that date?
I had a trip planned to Tennessee. She was aware that I was planning to leave about 11 a.m. On Friday. I need to get to Atlanta for an early dinner, so with traffic, she knew I was departing at 11. And at the yoga studio in the parking lot, she had asked if I was still going, if I didn't go, why not, what route I would be taking a lot of a bizarre amount of interest in that trip that didn't make sense to me at the time, given that she didn't want to spend time with me.
And how does it make sense to you now?
Well, if I had left on my trip at the scheduled time that she had known about for quite a while, I would have driven pretty close to Danny Markel's house about the same time as at the murder, in a similar looking car to the suspect vehicle.
What type of vehicle did you drive?
I drove a 2004 Nissan Sentra that was silver metallic gray color.
So if you had followed your original plans, you would have been passing by the Markel residence or nearby there around the same time as the killers were fleeing?
Yeah, I would have been at Capitol Circle in Thomasville. Sure, I would have been on the same cell tower, for example. I think my life could have been pretty complicated had I taken my original plans.
All right, so you didn't, I guess, take the original plans.
No, I did not. I had made a last minute decision the night before to leave Thursday night instead. I had not informed Ms. Adelson about that because we weren't speaking. Actually, no, I don't know that anyone, for sure that anyone in Tallahassee knew I had changed my plans, just the people at the other end.
All right, so you were actually in Tennessee at the time of the homicide.
I was.
And when we've heard you were called in as a potential suspect, and apparently named by a Jane McPherson. Do you know who that is?
I called him at like 11:45 or so and left a message, and that was, I thought weird, but I thought whatever, like
And
he's
you
in a meeting.
probably thought, oh good, I don't have to talk to him. But
I was really anxious
Oh
about
my
speaking
God.
with him and having this be a contentious issue about where
Which
our
of course
kid
it
going to go to
is.
school.
Oh,
See if I
should.
washed my hands since noon, and I was embarrassed to say I hadn't. I don't remember when I last washed my hands.
Oh God. Yeah, no, I think Jeff is somebody that they should talk
Okay.
to. And I don't know of anyone else.
They were asking, like, does he have gambling debt? Does he have? And I'm like, the only person he owes money to is me. Like, there's no one. He's like, he's a straight shooter,
Parents who really don't like him.
but not enough to.
But this is
kill
a
him.
different, right, it's a
Like,
different, right.
They don't like him, they don't want to go to lunch with him.
Right. No, yeah, no.
He doesn't
this
make
is-
friends easily, but it's not like he makes a ton of
And he has, I didn't want you to be married to him, but this was the method.
Well, that's what I
This is
said
not
to the
method.
officer. I was like, we had a rough time, but
This has been a terrible
he's
time.
the father of my children.
Right.
And things were entering a new phase where he has this girlfriend and he's out of town a lot, and that was nice.
I do.
Okay, who is that?
That was a friend of Wendi Adelson's, and she was a doctoral student in our program. I had not much relationship with her, just a kind of a working relationship. We'd worked on a couple of projects together, but I didn't know her very well at all.
But someone that knew that you had been dating Wendi. at that
Yeah, I
time.
think she was a confidant of Wendi Adelson's, yes, for sure.
Okay, so you get called in, and were you able to provide documentation to show that you were in Tennessee and not in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I was excluded fairly quickly because the investigators found Kmart surveillance footage of me at a Kmart in Tennessee using my credit card and my cell phone showing me there shortly after the murder, so it was impossible that I was the shooter.
All right, and then was there also some similar type coincidences around the time of the trip that the killers made in June?
Yes. On June 6th, I had a business trip to Gainesville, and I departed at 11 a.m. on a Friday, June 6th, which Miss Adelson would have known about by March. So really, I take 2 trips out of Tallahassee in my car the whole spring and summer semester. And both times, hitmen try to kill Danny Markel.
Okay. Any further contact with Wendi after the yoga date?
We, about 10 days after the murder, she reached out to a mutual friend, and we had a few phone calls.
And during one of those phone calls, did you learn about a dinner where Wendi had become ill at the table?
Yes, I did learn about that.
And what did you learn about that dinner?
That she went out to dinner with Charlie for what he called a celebration dinner. He said something to her. She spontaneously vomited on the table.
And this would have been within how much time after the homicide?
Within a few weeks.
Was it specified that the celebration was in reference to Dan Markel's death as opposed to anything else?
Wasn't specified.
Okay. But whatever it was, that's the dinner where she vomited.
That's right. That's right.
One moment, please.
Now, I've done a longer form video about Wendi and Jeff and how I think Wendi set them up. I'll put it in the description. But just based on this testimony alone, how can you think that Wendi Adelson was not involved 5 days before the murder? 1, she's telling him about the hitman and Charlie. 2, she's asking him after she breaks up with him, because clearly she doesn't want him around during that week. After she breaks up with him, she's asking him about his travel plans. 3, the other time the hitman went down just happened to be a time that Jeff was going out of town, and Wendi wasn't involved. I mean, come on. I mean, I know this is circumstantial, and I have other videos. Obviously, I have a whole playlist, which I will also put in the description, on why I think Wendi was involved and why I think she should go down. But to me, this is damning evidence, and I believe Jeff. I believe Jeff Lacasse. I think he's credible. And if you believe Jeff Lacasse, how can you not think Wendi was involved? Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Appreciate you watching. Please hit that like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.